Today we're looking at Colorverse Redshift. Hi, I'm Adam and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now Colorverse Redshift is a red magenta ink, more magenta than red. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples, I put the ink into a different pen for a day, I then put it into a Lamy All-Star with a 1.1 stub to take my notes for this video. Now before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is there is a definite line of magenta across the bottom, very light, and it pushes its way up, and then we really don't see this red come in, but we see reddish tones in the writing, probably from the darkness of the magenta. This is a pure magenta ink though. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now the only real difference we're noticing is the line across the bottom is much darker, much more there. But again, we're seeing a very pure magenta. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it behaves respectably. That extra fine becomes more of a medium in writing. It does not blur out all over the place and become unreadable. It doesn't mix with the highlighter fluid. So I feel safe as a note taker. Now water is reactivating and lifting all of the darkest tones, but not all of the ink. A lot more stayed around than I would expect, but it's making me think about the second chromatography where we saw a bunch of that in the line on the bottom stay. Pen Flush did everything that water did and nothing more. I was hoping for a bit more of a response, but we really didn't get it. We see a lot of that light magenta pinky color that was at the bottom of the second chromatography. It's really holding on pretty well. And 1/3 bleach solution, shockingly, did not completely remove this from the paper. It did move a lot of it. You do start to see the white of the paper coming through. This means to me you try it in a more inexpensive pen before you try it in your expensive pen. Before you get any kind of, what's that word I would be looking for? Staining that you wouldn't want. Now the thing is that I use a lot of these same pens to do all of these writing samples, and in my pen for a day and in my notes I use a lot of the same rotations, so sometimes when staining occurs it could be from a lot of different inks. At this point I am 293 inks through these pens, so it's hard to tell if some of that discoloration that could occur is because of this ink. Just be weary, because that bleach did not completely remove it. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Colorverse Redshift has a viscosity of 1.27, making it holy cow wet. It is wetter than the red zone. It's getting really close to water. Water has the viscosity of 1 to give you an idea. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Colorverse Redshift has an average dry time of 16 seconds, so despite it being so incredibly wet, its dry time is normal. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. It's a nice dark tone.
The extra fine has the same tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. The medium gives the same tone as the extra fine and the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. And the smear test, I don't think you could recover this if you smeared it while you were writing. Just looking, I have more papers there than I expected. Tomoe River. No bleeding. Yes, we get some ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading. The extra fine actually is the same tone as the 1.1. I know it looks slightly lighter on camera, but when I fold the paper over and I put those tones next to each other, like that, I see the same tone. So the extra fine is no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 26 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. The smear test, there's no recovering. You can't even see that there was lines. There's no indication at all. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 12 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. In a smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. So I would call this one of those boring inks. It gives a very predictable color in all of the nibs and all of the papers. If this is a color you like, it's very predictable, so very good for that. Life paper, no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 gives no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the exact same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 10 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone as the 1.1, or as the 1.1 and the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. And the smear test, there's a very strong maybe at recovering that. Levenger paper, no bleeding, no ghosting. I love this paper, just not their formatting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading. The extra fine, for the first time in all of the papers, the extra fine is a different tone. It's slightly lighter than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. 7 seconds to dry. The medium has back to the 1.1 tone. It's with a little darker than the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Franklin Christoph, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading. The extra fine is the same tone. It looks a little bit lighter on camera. Again, when I fold that paper over and I'm looking at these tones side by side like this, I'm seeing the same tone. It's the thinner line that makes it look a little lighter, but it's not. So when you cut out some of those variables and you get them right there, it's the same tone. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone as the extra fine and the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we get none. In the smear test, you could probably recover this if you smeared while you were writing, and that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse Redshift, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I chose Diamine's Blue-Black. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Colorverse Redshift? The color came across to me as very dull and uninteresting. On every paper that I wrote on, with every nib, and different wetness that I wrote with it with. I'm just completely uninterested in this particular ink. Thanks for watching.